It sure was a surprise when a Corpse Party game was announced for the Nintendo Switch only about a week before the game actually came out. But what surprised me the most was the choice of game they decided to put on Nintendo's new hybrid console. It wasn't the original game that released on the 3DS and PSP, and it wasn't Corpse Party 2 Dead Patient that is about to have its first chapter release on PC in about a week. It was Blood Drive, once exclusive to the PlayStation Vita, that is the third and final entry of the Heavenly Host saga. As strange as that is, and I'll explain why in just a moment, let's dive in because I'm happy to be able to dive through the Corpse Party series on a new handheld. Here is my review of Corpse Party Blood Drive for the Nintendo Switch. Alright, we're going to have a spoiler warning here in a minute, but before I do, I want to talk about how strange it is for Blood Drive to be on the Nintendo Switch. Corpse Party has always been a series extremely heavy on story and without much explanation prior. Each game is more of a direct continuation of the game that came before, and Blood Drive is no different. As such, this isn't really a game that you can go into without pretty extensive knowledge of the previous two games. And that's why it's such an oddity to be on the Switch, because the other two games, Corpse Party and Book of Shadows, are not. So if you plan on playing Blood Drive on the Switch, I suggest you catch up with the original game by either playing it on 3DS, PSP, or PC, or watching the 4-episode anime series Corpse Party Tortured Souls, which is available for streaming both on VRV and YouTube, as well as watching a video of the Blood Drive chapter of Book of Shadows that links directly into this game. Thankfully, I've already found both of these watching materials on YouTube. I'll put links in the description for this video and at the very end of this video if you want to watch them. Now for the rest of this section, you've got a spoiler warning. If you haven't played or don't know the stories of the first two games, I suggest you skip ahead in this video to the 2-minute and 41-second mark. The story of Blood Drive picks up right where Book of Shadows left off. After Ayumi's failed resurrection spell, she and the other Heavenly Host survivors struggle with the reality they face, no one believing them about the existence of their friends and being labeled as crazy. However, when Ayumi finds out that Heavenly Host Elementary School still stands and the Book of Shadows is within its halls, she goes on a desperate journey back to that horrifying dimension to reclaim the book and find another way to resurrect her fallen friends. Now, the overall story of Blood Drive isn't bad, and it does have a fitting ending that bridges the gap between it and Corpse Party 2 Dead Patient, but there are a few strange inconsistencies between the true ending of the original game and many events of this one. These aren't really world-changing, but small retcons like characters being surprised at story tidbits they should have already been well aware of. When it comes to gameplay like the original, this is an adventure game with puzzle elements in a horror-based atmosphere. As you go through the game, you're going to be navigating around 3D areas and rooms, avoiding hazards and finding items to solve puzzles with. They didn't really add any new content in this version of Blood Drive, so we're mostly going to be comparing this to the previous two games of the series, leaving the differences between this and the original version of Blood Drive for a little bit later. The main differences between this game and the original game are the hazard and talisman systems. While you wander around all of the 3D hallways and rooms, you have to watch for constant hazards built into the floor, like cracked floorboards, spike strips, and tripwires. You lose health every time you walk into one of these traps, so it's important to constantly keep your flashlight on and be aware of your surroundings so you can avoid them, whether you're just strolling around the hall or in a full sprint running from a phantom. And that brings us to the talisman system and phantom ghost enemies. There are a lot of enemies in this game compared to previous games of the series, and you've got to be constantly watching out for them. Warding off these phantoms is mostly a matter of running away from them and hiding in a closet until they go away, or picking up talisman items that you can find in various rooms, and those talismans will automatically be used up and destroy a phantom that gets to you. But despite there being so many phantoms around, the game is pretty fair in that if you explore around all of the rooms, you're going to find at least as many talismans in an area as there are phantoms in an area. So as long as you're going through all of the rooms and exploring to find hidden items, you shouldn't have too many problems here. And honestly, that's something you should be doing anyways, because exploring has always been a big part of the franchise back to its original entry. Now, the only things that might hinder your journey are the flashlight and stamina systems. You can run from phantoms all day long, but you'll eventually run out of stamina and your full-on sprint will slowly turn into a stumble. This is where things can get a little tricky, because if you're being chased by a phantom and don't have any talismans, you have to be able to move quickly and get into that locker before your stamina gauge and the batteries in your flashlight end up running out on you. These features could could be seen as pretty annoying, but you actually only have to deal with the stamina gauge. The Switch version retains the fan-requested infinite flashlight feature that the original PlayStation Vita version was updated with. Not that you actually need it. The Switch version of the game seems to be a lot brighter and a lot less dark than the Vita original. In the original game, you couldn't turn your flashlight off and run around all of the halls without being able to run into all these hazards. On the Switch version, I can turn my flashlight off and still see almost everything around me. Now, I wouldn't really consider Blood Drive to be a really big horror game even back on the PlayStation Vita, but this high level of brightness and the lack of a setting to change it even brings it further out of the scary game category. Now let's get into content and length, which is pretty much the same as the original game. The main story will likely take you about 15, maybe 20 hours at the most if you do a significant amount of exploring and don't use a guide to get through it. But the game doesn't stop there. As you clear chapters of the main story, you will eventually unlock 7 extra chapters that dive into the lore and backstories of some of the game's new characters. Combining this with the other bonuses like messages from all of the voice actors, you've got a lot of content, especially for that $20 price tag. Now let's dive into presentation. Graphically, the game doesn't really look that different. The 3D models look nice and smooth on the PlayStation Vita, and they look just as smooth here. The main improvement is performance. The original game had a lot of slowdown and frame drops in pretty much every area that you could go through. While there are a couple rooms in the Switch version that have some slowdown and small frame dips, most of the game is vastly improved and a lot smoother. The load times have also improved, giving you only a few seconds to wait to go into menus instead of 7 to 10 seconds like the original game. But there is a bit of a weird glitch that I found when getting wrong endings and game overs. Every once in a while, when I end up dying from a wrong end and go back to the menu, the display will be completely black. I'll be able to navigate the menus and be able to hear myself doing it, but unless I close and restart the software, I will get an endless black screen. Now let's get into battery life. On the original model, Corpse Party Blood Drive has a battery range of 2 hours and 37 minutes up to 3 hours and 37 minutes. On the Nintendo Switch Lite, it has a range of 3 hours and 48 minutes up to 5 hours and 16 minutes. And on the V2 or Redbox model, it has a range of 4 hours and 54 minutes up to 6 hours and 29 minutes. Now in conclusion, the third entry of the Heavenly Host saga comes to a new handheld much more optimized than before. Now on the downside, there's a strange black screen glitch upon getting some wrong ends and is oddly brighter than it was on the PlayStation Vita. But still, if you're a fan of the series and want to play the third entry or just see how it all ties into Corpse Party 2 Dead Patient before it releases next week, this is an affordable and well optimized way to do it. Reviews to Go rates Corpse Party Blood Drive for the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.